alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. MashaAllah, I love the introduction, alhamdulillah. Thank you for the warm salams. MashaAllah. If those who can hear me can make their way to the prayer hall, inshallah, we're going to start our discussion, inshallah.
Do like this.
So, as I'm looking at the crowd, alhamdulillah, we have a really good turnout. And so, first and foremost, I want to say the sisters are outnumbering the brothers. So, any brothers who might be in the local area, let's fill it up. Alhamdulillah. First of all, Jazakallah khairan for having us here. Again, my name is Brother Ali. The first thing I want to do is to thank MCC for hosting this event. Because this event touches just everyone in this room. The topic actually touches everyone in this room. And no, it's called ScreenAgers, tending toward the teenagers, but really, we have everyone in this room is affected, whether you're under the age of 13, whether you're over the age of 18. So again, we have note cards going around, so if you have any comments that you'd like to bring to the panel, then we'd be more than happy to answer any of those questions. So again, my name is Brother Ali Bishop. I am actually a mental health therapist at one of our Bay Area high schools in Newark Memorial High School. I am actually an independent therapist hired by the high school to come into the high school to do individual and group therapy with the high school students there. The adab of knowledge is to actually understand where you're getting this knowledge. So you need to know a little bit about the panel, who you're getting information from. So I am going to briefly, inshallah, let you know my educational background, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sister Hosai, and then she'll talk a little bit about hers. So my background, I am actually a master's in social work. I actually did my undergrad at Sac State University, and I did my undergrad work in social work. The clinical track I took was clinical mental health. My field work was done in the nonprofit sector in Sacramento. The majority of my work started in alcohol and substance abuse. And so when the film started to talk about addiction, that resonated deeply with me. Because what we see in addiction with computer screens and iPhones and gaming, this is exactly what individuals who are going through narcotic, alcohol addiction. So my whole background, my undergraduate was in the field of alcohol and substance use and abuse. When I did my graduate work, I did it at Cal State University, Cal State East Bay. Go Pioneers. All right. Thank you. I'm trying to lighten the mood, right? Just trying to bring everyone up. So my graduate study, I actually did that in social work as well. So I'm a master's in social work. Again, I took the clinical mental health track. I did school-based mental health therapy. So one of my field placements was Kittyama Elementary School, where I was educated in play therapy, where I worked with young children who have been traumatized, victimized, and going through severe grief and loss. And I was trained in play therapy, where I would help these young children get through those traumatic times that they were facing in their lives. My second year, I went to the high school. And I wanted to stay in the school system because I wanted to make a huge impact in the youth before they become adults. The high school that I interned in was the high school I am currently employed in. So the high school principal came to me and he said, the work that you're doing is so critical, can you be with us full time? And I said, absolutely. So I have been now a high school therapist, independently contracted in the high school. So I am dealing with teenagers who are going through anxiety, depression, grief and loss. So I have heavy therapy work within the high school. And a lot of it is around social media. So I am very honored by this masjid and the board of this masjid to invite me here and hopefully be of some help as we talk about this subject. So that is about me. That's who I am. That's now you know where you're getting some information from. The last point before I turn it over to Sister Hosai, I want to again thank MCC because this video we did, Sister Hosai and I, we did a panel at MCA in the South Bay. We did it on this film. I was told that this film is over $600 to rent. So the masjid cares so much about this community that it would spend $600 and some change to rent this film and then send it back to the producers. So I am just in awestruck that our communities are embracing this film, sharing this film, and discussing this film. And so again, I just want to thank MCC for having me here. I am now going to turn it over to my colleague, Sister Hosai, Jazakallah khairan, and inshallah, assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wal mursaleen Sayyidina wa Mawlana wa Habibina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathiran. I am very honored, as Brother Ali mentioned, to be here with all of you. Alhamdulillah, my background is not as elaborate as Brother Ali's. I am, by profession, I used to teach. Now I'm a homeschool mother at home. But I also do, I'm a mental health advocate, which I've been doing for several years. Myself and my cousin, Dr. Nafisa Sikandari, we started a website called Mental Health for Muslims about close to 8 years ago, and since then I've had, alhamdulillah, the opportunity to speak to different communities throughout California and the country about various mental health issues, and many times those discussions have come back to this topic of social media and the concern that parents as well as teens have about mental health. Sorry about that. It's not a muster program if we don't have at least one interference, right? Mic interference. Thank you. So many times these discussions have centered around this issue of social media. I can't count how many private conversations I've had here in this community, in other communities here in the Bay Area, in Southern California, with parents especially, many times really, really concerned parents, like, what do I do? Do I indulge my child who's been asking me for months, for a smartphone? Do I let them on this particular app, or should I say no? What kind of boundaries should I create? So there's a deep concern, and it's absolutely there's reason for it. We know, we watch this film, but if you're paying attention at all at what's happening in our world, you know that there are absolute inherent dangers of social media, and it's our responsibility as parents to look out for our teens. So these grievances and these concerns are definitely warranted. And I've also heard from teens who are really worried, or not worried, more so frustrated, I would say, frustrated at the fact that they feel that their parents are being too strict and putting too many limitations on them, and that there's a lack of trust in their relationship, and they feel like they really have no options. There's a lot of tension in the home because of this topic. So hearing from both perspectives has been really, for me, eye-opening, because I can see where both groups are coming from, and that's why these types of events are so important, because what we're trying to do here is we're trying to encourage dialogue. One of the things, the generational gap that I think, happens naturally between parents and children is that sometimes discussions stop, right? It's just my way, that's it, right? If you're a teen, does that happen to you, right? When you bring up something and then the discussion sort of just ends, because parents obviously don't want to, make, do something or make the wrong sort of judgment call, so it's just easier to say, I said so, that's it. But that's obviously not going to fix the problem, because if you know anything about this culture, you know that people find a way, right? So that's what's happening now. When you have full stop conversations that just don't go anywhere, then teens will have access elsewhere, and so that's where you see these problems now happening, where they're getting access to really harmful material, or just access to things that they shouldn't be getting through friends, through school, through libraries, through all these different places that now make things available. So that's not a healthy approach to just end the conversation. So we have to be doing exactly what we're doing right now, which is talking. And that's why it's so important that we hear from you. If you notice, there's a very sweet, I don't know where she went, one of the volunteers, mashallah, may Allah bless her, she's been walking around collecting these note cards. And the reason why this is so important is because we have a mixed audience here. When it's just teens and it's just adults, we can, have really clear, open conversations. But what happens naturally is that when we mix these groups up, people kind of clam up and they don't feel comfortable talking about certain things because you don't want to get in trouble going at home, right? You don't want to say something that you shouldn't say, or admit something or whatever, or bring up sort of, open a can of worms. So people just sort of tend to listen, but really the purpose of our being here tonight is we want to hear from you. So we've gathered, alhamdulillah, a few different questions here, but I really encourage you, if you are a teen and you're struggling with this topic at home, and if you're seeing different, you feel frustrated, you feel that there's really no respect maybe for your opinion and for what you want, please open up to us, because we won't, there's that anonymity that's afforded to you here with these note cards. We don't know who you are, but we can address your concern here. And similar with parents, if you feel like this is a real issue in your home and it's causing a lot of problems with you and your child, you feel like they're slipping away from you, inshallah, we will do our best to help you today in this discussion. So before we sort of get started, in presenting some of the thoughts that we had about the film, we did want to get a chance to look at these, but is there anybody here in the audience right now who has something that they want to share, a reflection about the film, or something that you want for us to address? Just if you didn't write a note card, but you're willing to stand up and say something. Anybody? No brave souls out there? Okay. Yeah. Oh, we do have a hand. Yes. Where is that hand? Did it go down? Did you change your mind? All right. Yes. Bismillah. In the back. Yes. I will do my best to hear you. Just project your voice, yes. And we'll look through these in the meantime, but we want to get the dialogue going, so we don't want to stop. Bismillah.
I have three boys, alhamdulillah. They're good boys, and they're coming here too. But my middle child, which is he's 17, and I have a big problem with his the limitation of playing or watching or the computer.
Okay.
So stopping at this point is a little hard for me because he's almost an adult. And I don't want to come across that he disrespected the point of this.
Right. Is he here tonight?
Yes.
Yes, he's here. Have you had a chance to talk to him about the film at all?
I think he watched it.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Well, alhamdulillah, that's a great first step. So I applaud you for coming here, and I applaud him for coming here, because mashallah, that shows willingness to at least, open and be willing to hear you out. I encourage you, if alhamdulillah you did bring your child here, this is a great, fertile ground to really start talking in a mature way, in a way where you really respect your child. Sometimes what happens, and it was actually brought up in the movie too, right, that parents we get so authoritative because we're afraid, right? We're afraid that our children are going to do something harmful, that our tone becomes authoritative, right? Which is what I was hinting at before, where it's just like, no, that's enough, I don't want you to do it anymore. That end of subject, right? And what that does is it undermines the intelligence, right, of your child, who is no longer your baby, right? They are growing. And from the Islamic perspective, the onset of puberty is when they really do become adults, right? And so obviously, you know, there's adolescence and all the different physiological changes that they go through that, you know, fully develops their mental capacities and all and whatnot, but you still treat them with the same dignity and respect that you would anybody else. And so what I would encourage is to use this as an opportunity to really encourage, you know, thoughtful dialogue, which is not just to say, well, now that you saw the movie, you know, did you see what I've been telling you, you know, and kind of come with that, you know, well, I told you so kind of attitude, but more like, what did you think of the movie? What are your takeaways, right? When you, as the parent, I think, you know, encourage that dialogue from that respectful place, your child is going to feel heard and listened to and validated, and then hopefully it's reciprocated, right? When it's your turn to discuss and you can say, well, you know, the takeaways that I got from the movie, or what was really concerning for me is this, and this is my fear, that they really now feel like they're talking to it's a mutually, you know, respectful discussion, and it's not that you're talking down to them or you're at them, right? And so from that, then it's a matter of, well, let's find some compromise, because I know now that you're 17, mashallah, you know the internet probably better than I do, in and out. What do you think we can find a compromise where both of us are happy? Because as your parent, my concerns are real, right? I have reason to be worried. And I understand this is a new world, that your world is different than my world, and that technology is important to you, and that there's all these amazing opportunities with being online. I get that, but how can we bridge this, you know, and what compromise can we find? What are you willing to do to work with me? And see, now what you're doing is you're encouraging your child to speak back to you, you know, in that respectful, compromising tone, not in the pushing back, rebellious tone, right? That will naturally, you're gonna get when you're too authoritative. And that's what happens whenever, and I've seen this play out time and time again, when parents think, I'm gonna be tough, you know, the child will either, you know, push back and equally be tough, or will maybe, you know, play the part, but then secretly, this is where, you know, spiritually it's very dangerous, because shaitan is right there. Shaitan loves nothing more than fitna. He loves nothing more to cause discord. So he'll inspire that child and justify all his feelings. Oh, your parents are so mean. They're so strict. They don't even respect you. Look how they talk to you. They think you're nothing. They think you're dumb. You don't know anything. You should prove them right. You should go and, you know, find these back channels and do this and this and this. So shaitan will get, you know, that's what he does. He inspires them to justify those actions where they start doing things behind your back. And at that point, you know, that's it. You know, the communication is broken down, and the relationship will eventually go in, you know, in a really bad direction. So I really encourage open dialogue, respectful dialogue, encouraging, you know, your child to really speak, not just to listen the entire time, but to speak and to hear them with true intention of like, what you say matters to me. I'm not just hearing you to, you know, to formulate my response to you because I already have my mindset made up. Don't do that. Walk into that discussion with a really open mind, and inshallah, it'll be mirrored back to you, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan for bringing that. I'll let Ali also please respond. Sure.
Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to, that was a really good question. One of the things that I find working with my students and my parents, when I'm doing individual therapy, I do a lot of collaboration with parents, and a lot of the issues are exactly what the sister mentioned. So one thing I would talk about is just healthy boundaries. And what boundaries are just rules, right? And so whenever, if you have a teenager who's driving, right, and you buy them a car, you know, Allahu Akbar, you bought them a car. Now we got to talk about healthy rules about driving the car, right? And it's the same thing with a cell phone. It's the same thing with computer screens. You buy them a computer screen, you give them a video game, Allahu Akbar, right? But we got to have some rules, right? So I talk a lot about healthy boundaries. So I always talk about two types of boundaries, right? So we have our flexible boundary, which it starts with yes, but, okay? Then we have a firm boundary, which is absolute no, okay? So a firm boundary would be such, okay, I'm giving you an iPhone 8. Great, Allahu Akbar, I got an iPhone 8. This is amazing, right? But the thing of it is, there's a firm boundary. You cannot have your iPhone in your bedroom, right? That's firm boundary. Here you go. Here's your phone. Congratulations, you've been asking for it. Allahu Akbar. But there's a firm boundary. 8 o'clock, you turn your phone in, and there's no argument, there's no debate, there's no discussion, right? That's what we call a firm boundary. Flexible boundary would be, you kind of earn it, right? You can move a parent can move their boundary in, right? So it would kind of look like, you can have your phone at 6 o'clock, and then all of a sudden, you know, the child says, well, what about till 6:30? You know, can I at least do it at 6:30? So they're pushing against the boundary, and you're like, okay, you've been really good about your phone. Okay, let's push it to 6:30 on the weekdays. But again, 8 o'clock, no phone in the bedroom, right? So you move one boundary in. Now, when you move a boundary in, you have the right to change it back. Okay, I didn't get the behavior I was looking for, or you know, maybe you slipped up somewhere else. Now I want to move that boundary back. I'm going to move that boundary. We're going to put it back to 6 o'clock. Okay, so again, just talk, because the film kind of discussed boundaries, but we always throw boundaries out there, but we don't really define what boundaries are. So as parents, I want you guys to have good, healthy boundaries. If you have good, healthy boundaries, in any relationship, you're going to have a good, healthy relationship. So I'm hoping that will help some. A lot of our questions as I'm reading are around cell phone usage. And so I just want to read one question. It said, why did you guys show this film, ScreenAgers, when you guys are telling us, and the children and adults, that you should be using less technology? It's a really good question because I like it. It's very blunt. Technology is a tool. I have a phone, right? But I use it as a tool, right? Sometimes I use it as entertainment, right? But I'm using it for a purpose. And so we're not saying, and I don't think ScreenAgers even said it, we should get rid of technology, right? We're immersed in it. It's very useful, it's very helpful, but we have to find that balance. Okay, so it's not getting rid of it completely, but it's not being so immersed in it that it's lowering our grades, it's affecting our relationships in negative ways, and so we have to find that healthy balance. And so that was just one of the questions, and whoever wrote that, may Allah bless you for being so blunt, so direct, and I really wanted to make sure I read that question. So,
I'm also going to read some of these questions because they are, mashallah, we got a good stack. You guys came through, thank you. And we're going to try to get to as many as we can, but there are a lot of common questions. This one I really appreciate because it kind of talks about what I wanted to touch about today. But someone asked, why do you think people are still on their phones after the whole movie? Another really blunt question, really good question. Before coming here tonight, I actually was listening to a few different talks, and then I read some stuff that was really fascinating to me. I read about a study that was done on boredom. And the study was so fascinating because it said that in the study they found that 2/3 of men and 1/4 of women preferred pain over being bored. So they were actually, in the study they were watching a film that was kind of boring, and they were given this electric shocker system. And 2/3 of men and 1/4 of women were shocking themselves throughout the movie because they were so bored, but they actually preferred pain more. And I think this is something that our teachers have talked about too, that the problem with why social media especially and our phones is getting out of control is that we're basically avoiding being alone with ourselves, right? You can pretty much do anything and everything. You can watch films, you can listen to music, it's just so distracting, but what is it distracting us from is the question. right? What is it distracting us from? It's distracting us from really just sitting with ourselves and allowing ourselves to think, to contemplate, to reflect. Where do we even get time to do this anymore? If you really think about the day-to-day lives that most of us have, from the time we wake up and to the time we sleep, there's constant bombardment, right? Of images, sounds, voices. One of the things, I don't know if any of the moms are like me, but I'm with my kids, alhamdulillah, at home, and I teach them, but there's times when I really need to focus. And so one of the things that really kind of drives me crazy is when they interrupt my focus, right? Because I'm like writing or I'm working on something, and then there's just constant questions, mommy, right? We all get this, mommy. And I always tell them, like, you're hurting, like it hurts my brain because I can't focus. So, but this is really our reality all the time. We're constantly distracted and bombarded. And so what the phones have done, it's actually given us sort of this customized way of just choosing what we want to distract ourselves with, right? We're not subject to just sitting in a space and doing nothing. We can actually do something that we enjoy and we like. But really, from a spiritual perspective, is this healthy, right? From knowing, you know, if you, inshallah, I mean, just being Muslim and having heard, I'm sure, many talks on the subject, but the importance of dhikr, right? How important is it for us to actually be thinking and contemplating and remembering, right? Remembering who? Remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remembering why we're here, what we're supposed to be doing here, our whole purpose. So this is really a big problem, and it's one of, you know, the things that I want us to talk about, which is looking at this issue not just from a practical, like, oh, we're here 2018, Americans, teens, you know, parents, kind of from that angle, but also from the angle from a spiritual perspective. As Muslims, how is this affecting us? How is this affecting us from a spiritual perspective? To be constantly on the phone. So for the teenagers out there, it's one of the things that obviously your parents are concerned about, is that this is so distracting that you're going to be seeing things and hearing things that are harmful for you spiritually, because anything is available to you. And as parents, we know this because we were, you know, we grew up in this age of knowing what it's like not to have social media and seeing what life has turned you know, into with social media. So our concerns are real, that there is that potential that this could really hurt your spiritual heart. But even for us as adults, you know, we have to admit our own addictions, right? How many of us also have addictions to our phone? We have to be real and just, you know, really break it down and say, as this question asked, even after watching this movie, why is everybody still checking their phone every 2 seconds and checking their Facebook or their social media? What's going on? It's because, again, this is now a spiritual problem. We've talked about addiction, we've talked about all that, but we have to be willing to really look at it from that angle of how is it affecting my spiritual heart? Am I even reading Quran as much anymore? Am I doing dhikr as much anymore as I used to maybe 10, 15 years ago? If you've seen a dip in your own spiritual practice because you're constantly connected to this, that's cause for concern, right? So inshallah, this discussion affects all of us, even though, you know, I hope the aim of some of the parents here wasn't just, oh, get through to my teens, but it's honestly for all of us to self-reflect, myself included. I had a friend recently commit to just removing herself completely off of social media for spiritual reasons, and I really commended her for that, because she recognized in herself that this was a real problem, and she wanted to basically change that. So how many of us are willing to do the same? How many of us are willing to cut ourselves off? Get off WhatsApp, get off Facebook, get off Instagram, Snapchat, right? Raise your hand if you guys are on all of these. Raise your hand if you're on Facebook. Let's just kind of get to know each other. I'm on Facebook. If you know me, you know I'm on Facebook, right? How many of you are on Instagram? How many of you are on Snap? Be honest, how many of you snapped today? Like, you snapped. You snapped stories, you snapped what you ate for lunch, your coffee, what you bought, right? MashaAllah. Okay? I mean, you see it. We're all in it. We're all in this together. So I hope that this, whatever we share today, you really understand that it's for nasiha for every single one of us, even us up here, to really look at how is this affecting us spiritually. Because we can talk about all the other stuff, but that is the biggest concern we should all have, right? If it's distracting us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from contemplating things like death. I mean, how many of us think about death anymore, really? Right? How many of you think about death on a daily basis? Like, seriously. MashaAllah, that's very good. May Allah bless all of you and continue to increase you. But these are important reflections, and it's not to be morbid. No, this is from the Sunnah. We remember death because it reminds us of our purpose. But sometimes when you're so caught up in looking at the world through this lens of just life, and there's so much vibrancy on social media, you can forget that death is imminent for all of us. So, alhamdulillah, but this question I thought was really relevant, that even now, after watching this and hearing information, we still can't help ourselves. It's because we're avoiding that really important discussion with ourselves, which is just being alone and being comfortable being alone.
I have a lot of, so we have so many, Allahu Akbar, we have so many note cards from all of you, and so what I'm trying to do, because we're not going to be, because we're really asked to be done and wrap it up at 9. Sister Hosai and I actually talked before we even started. What we'd like to do is stay an extra half an hour privately. I'm gonna kind of set up over here. If any of the youth, I would really prefer the youth. Because I want to give them a voice. What I'd like to do is give anyone half an hour, private, just talk to me one-on-one. No parents allowed, right? So don't bring your mom over, don't bring your dad over. Just bring, if you're a youth and you want to ask us a question, I'll be over here. I think Sister Hosai is going to be here available for half an hour. Allah swears by time, so we want to respect time. And so we've been asked to kind of go up till 9 o'clock. But one of the things that it's a very prominent theme in the note cards is addiction. I've seen the word throughout many of these note cards. So I just want to touch upon addiction. Okay. So there's actually signs of addiction that I wrote, and I put it on my cell phone. So it's a tool I'm using, right? So some of the signs of addiction that I've seen in substance use, and also too in screen addiction, a sense of fatigue, migraines due to intense concentration or eye strain, carpal tunnel, poor hygiene, right? You're not bathing, you're not taking care, you're not brushing your teeth, right? Because you're always on the game, right? Or you're always on the screen. Pro-social, these are just a couple that I want you guys to think about. Right? So there's many others, but also too a dip in your attitude, right? So when dad says put your phone away, and then all of a sudden you bite back at dad and say, well, I only want it for a minute, right? Your attitude changes. So these are signs that there might be some addiction issues. All right. So my job is to give you something, right? I wouldn't be doing my job as a therapist if I can't give you something that you can't take out of here. So one of the things I want you guys to think about is positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. Now, when it comes to the youth, I deal with high schoolers all the time, so I'm always trying to motivate them or help parents motivate their students to do better. Positive reinforcement, what that means is I'm going to give you something if you do something, or I'll give you something if you did something. Negative reinforcement does not mean hitting, it means taking something if you do not do something, okay? Research has found that negative reinforcement does work, but not as well as positive. So I encourage, and I do this with myself when I was in grad school. I had so many papers to write. I had so many presentations to do. When you get into grad school or you go into your doctorate program, there is intense things that you have to do. It's very timely oriented and there's a lot of pressure. So you have to motivate yourself. So I actually had to do this myself. I would say no screen time for myself unless I wrote 2 pages a day. Because I'm always writing papers, right? So I was not wanting to do that activity, and so I was actually distracting myself, right? I was having more fun watching a movie or video gaming or whatever. So I actually had to reverse it. So I used positive reinforcement for myself. I get a half an hour because I love PlayStation, right? That's what I do, right? So I would give myself a half an hour of PlayStation if I wrote 2 pages a day. And then when I did that, I was hard on myself. And I even told my wife, I'm a grown man, I told my wife, I said, don't let me play unless I knock out my 2 pages. And I knocked out my dissertation in a matter of a month and a half, and my peers within my cohort, they were shocked. They're like, how are you doing this? What are you doing? And I'm like, it's positive reinforcement. Did you guys not learn that in Behavioral Psychology 101? Right, that was the class we all took together, right? Positive reinforcement. So I'm giving this to you now. Think about it. Positive reinforcement. What can you do for yourself? What can you do for your kids? Give yourself something for doing something, if that makes any sense at all. So we're going to be wrapping up real soon. I just want to personally thank, I'm going to give the microphone over to Sister Hosai for her last comments. I just want to thank all of you for taking your time. Here it is, Friday night. It's 9:30, or actually it's 9. And you guys could be doing other things. But you guys decided to be here tonight and talking about this, and especially our youth. I see so many shining faces, and I just want to thank you for just having this conversation with us. So on my behalf, Assalamu alaikum. I'm going to be here till 9:30, 9:45, 10 o'clock if you need me. I'm here for you. So just come find me, okay? So Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khairan. I did have a few questions here that were kind of all similar, and I have some closing remarks too, but I want to get to these because they're clearly written from children, but they're all the same. Why do you think parents tell us to decrease screen time if they are on their screens just as much as us? What if your parents are on their laptop 24/7 and they say they're just working? Is that okay? Your dad tells you to put your phone away, but then they go and they are on the phone because that's what they, what do you do about that? So, the kids are paying attention. I think for the parents in the room, as we all know, kids model behavior that we show them. So if you're going to say, don't do this, but then you do the same thing, it's obviously confusing. So you have to be willing to open that discussion. And for the children in the room who see this type of behavior, it is important to know that obviously adults and children are different, and our lives are different, and many of the adults especially living in this area and, in this time, do have to work on their computers and on their phones. So if they're working, it's not the same as playing video games, right? Or playing, Words for Friends or checking Facebook. So you kind of don't just, make it all one thing, like it's all the same. You're just on your phone all the time. But actually, consider the fact that they truly are doing something important. And maybe that's just a discussion that for all the families here that you have to have. I've had that with my children. My children have definitely pointed that out to me, like, Mom, why are you on the phone? And then I explain to them. And this is just advice as a parent, I am very open with my kids, so I tell them everything. I show them, I'm like, listen, this is what Mommy does. Mommy's a writer, I write. I like to write a lot, so where do I write? I write on a computer. Here's my files, you can look at my folder, you can see. And then they get so caught up with like all the words I've typed out, and they're like, wow, you typed all those words. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't come easily, so they get it. But when we just say, I'm working, it's just, it's kind of dismissive, right? And this is where we have to be more respectful of how we speak to our children. It's so important that you open your conversations and are open to answering their questions with respect, especially when they're young. I think one of the tragic things that we do as parents is treat little children like they're nuisances all the time. Just stop asking so many questions, what do you know? That's so rude and mean, and it's not part of the character of the Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ honored everybody from old to young. He would sit and talk to children. He would, come down to their level and speak to them eye to eye. It's just a really unhealthy part of some of our cultures and the greater culture to just treat children that way. So if you do that, why are you surprised when they're teenagers and they're slamming doors in your faces, right? Or just shutting you out? Because it's again, what you teach them is going to be mirrored back to you. So if you are respectful with your children from a young age, inshallah, they will respect your rules even. They will follow the rules, and they'll be mindful to not hurt you and not to disappoint you because you were so careful with them when they were children. So that's just a general nasiha about really watching the way you explain the rules to your kids and just your general tone. Now, as far as closing remarks, as Brother Ali said, I would like to give you some takeaways. So what I mentioned before is from looking at this from a spiritual angle. There's three components of what I call digital literacy from an Islamic perspective, and I encourage all of you to really just start being more literate about what's going on in the world. If you're not on social media for personal choices, I respect that, but that doesn't mean that you can't know about what's going on social media. So there's a difference. You don't necessarily have to participate, but you should absolutely know how they work. You should know how Instagram works. You should know how Snapchat works. You should know how Facebook and Twitter and all of these other WhatsApp, all these other apps that kids are into work. Because when they come to ask you, if you don't know, then they're not going to look at your opinion as having any credibility. What do you know, right? But if you're like, actually, yeah, the reason why I don't want you to go on Instagram is, FYI for parents, just in case you didn't know, one of the apps that I think is probably the most dangerous out there is Instagram and Snapchat. Why? Is because not only do your kids have access to, they can befriend whoever, but there's pages that are called like the Explorer page, right? Which is the algorithms of these apps. They basically look at the friends that your kids are connected with and look at what they're looking at, and then they put together a screen full of images based on what everybody else is doing. So it's not just your child's behavior that impacts what comes on that page. It's the behavior of everybody they're connected with. So there can be very clearly pornographic pictures on there, or just content that's really inappropriate that your child might have never even knew about, but just one swipe on a different button will expose them to that stuff. So you have to know this stuff. That's what I mean about digital literacy. Knowing how apps work, knowing how to navigate the web, and just knowing what the digital footprint is. So when you're having discussions with your children about why it's so important that they control their behavior, that you can explain to them that their future could be impacted by their behavior now. Job prospects, marriage prospects. If you post a picture online when you're 15, it could come to haunt you later when you're 23, because someone sees that image and goes, oh, no, I can't marry into a family like that, or I don't want someone working in my company who is able to do that, right? These things happen to people all the time now. So understanding what the digital footprint means and explaining that to your child, and then all the different dangers of scam artists and things like that. So it's really important to know internet safety and security, and then social media, mental health ramifications, which is what we talked about, or what the documentary really talks about, what's going on with the brain, getting addicted to these things, how it affects just the pleasure centers, the frontal cortex, the dopamine, all of that stuff that's affecting the brain of your young adolescent children, their developing brains, how it's impacting them and how it's going to possibly, lead them to addictive behaviors. It's so important that you know that. And then the spiritual ramifications, which we talked about earlier, how it affects your spiritual presence in prayer, in other areas where you should really be able to focus. If you have your brains all over the place because you can't wait to get to your phone during prayer, this is a clear problem. But these are the types of conversations that you should talk about when you're bringing up your concerns to your children, because they matter and they're based on there's studies, there's things that you can really back up instead of just saying because I said so. So inshallah, increase our literacy is really important. We do have, like Brother Ali said, so many questions. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get all of them. But if you do want to talk, whether you're a teen or a parent, we're here, inshallah, for any discussions. So, Bismillah. Jazakumullah khairan again to all of you for coming and staying this late. May Allah bless all of you and protect our children, inshallah, and this wonderful community. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.